Alright, so now that the RE4 Remake's been out for a while and everyone's probably seen the end credits kind of cutscene, I do want to talk about the potential of a RE5 Remake that is possibly coming, as well as go over my own kind of thoughts on what they could do with the game to improve it over the original. I'm a big fan of RE5, and it honestly sits quite high on my list of favourite games in the series, so there's a lot I like about the game already that should definitely stick, but at the same time, there are definite improvements that could be made in a remake, so without any further ado, let's just go over the ideas I have and talk about how they could be implemented into a RE5 remake. First of all, the big one I think that everyone kind of discusses when talking about this remake is keep the game co-op, you know, keep the game as a two-player experience. We haven't had a co-op game for a while, and people love it. You know, you've seen these PvP games come out for the past couple of years now, and they don't stick ever, and they never really do well, and people are always saying, you know, remake Outbreak, remake this and this because it's got co-op, but Resident Evil 5 is like the perfect example for bringing a co-op game into the RE engine. Just look at RE4 Remake, that game plays so well and it's so fun. Now imagine that game in that style of gameplay, but with a friend. Like, it's going to be infinitely better than probably anything else they could do. RE6 is a whole different thing, like that game's just over the top, but RE5 keeps it kind of, it does go over the top with the action near the end, and I think they could definitely tone it down like they did with RE4, but, you know, it's still reasonably a mix between horror and action, I would say, for the most part. In terms of the solo player, I'm not sure what they would do. I definitely do think that the co-op partners you get throughout RE4's Remake's campaign definitely kind of feel like a testing ground for an AI partner in an RE5 Remake, like especially the parts of Louis there, and he's helping you shoot. Ash's AI is improved as well, so it's definitely something to take note of if they're going to do a 5 remake, and definitely try and implement that into a Sheva or a Chris AI, depending on who you're playing. But yeah, I would always say to anyone who would ever want to play RE5, you know, play it with a friend, because it's so much better, and you can clearly tell the game is meant to be played with 2 people rather than having an AI, because if you played RE5 recently, you'll know that AI does sometimes do some stupid stuff, or it'll get stuck. It will just give you ammo you don't need, or it'll heal you unnecessarily, and it can be annoying. So they could literally just improve the AI in the remake and it'd be fine for a solo player. But at the same time, you know, RE5 is built for 2 people, so definitely keep that in place. Staying with the gameplay side of the game for a little bit, the QTE sections in RE5 are also quite big, especially on a scale with the original RE4. And how they did that in the remake was really, really good with RE4, is they made a lot of those bigger QTE sections playable. You actually have to engage rather than kind of just watching a cutscene and hitting the button every now and again. And I think that could definitely be implemented into an RE5 remake as well. Just imagine the early section of RE5 with the Magini on the bike, where you have to kind of watch the cutscene and dodge them at perfect times. Imagine that as an actual interactable gameplay section with a friend, where if you mess up your movement or if you don't call out in time, you die. That'd be really fun. As well as the Wesker scene later on in the game on his jet, where you fight him in a cutscene. They could make that part just a playable section as well. A lot of what they did in that regard with RE4 is really, really good. Obviously the Krauser cutscene comes to mind a lot. That was originally a QTE, and now they've made that whole scene an actual fight where you actually have to fight him properly with a knife, and it's very, very well done. So they could definitely do that in a remake for 5 as well. QTEs are definitely a thing of the time, and they're not really in games anymore, so I definitely see a lot of them being removed from RE5 as well. On the topic of Wesker's character, try and tone him down a little bit in the 5 remake compared to the original. One thing I really like about Code Veronica, and it's very rare I say that because I do not like that game, but what they did with Wesker in Code Veronica was a lot better than what they did with RE5. He had the like enhanced powers and stuff like that, but he wasn't this over-the-top dodging bullets Neo clone like he is in RE5. I think that's a bit ridiculous, and they could definitely bring that back a bit. So maybe kind of keep him hard to fight and still quick, but maybe not make him as like edgy and cheesy as he is in the original game. I'm not sure how they could change him specifically. If anyone has any thoughts, do let me know, but I think they definitely need to tone him back just slightly, because I know he's not the big bad and it makes sense for him to be really strong, but how they did it in RE5 was kind of dumb. Another thing that's fairly present in the original RE5, and it's definitely again a thing of its time, was a turret section. Basically you're on the back of these Humvees and you have to kind of shoot a load of Magini on bikes along the path. Very much a thing of its time. If you play games around the time RE5 came out, a lot of them had these turret sections, and even Dead Space 1 had one too. With the Dead Space remake, that section of the game is still present, but they've changed it so you're not just sitting in a turret anymore. It's very much more, you're engaged in it, and I don't know how they would change that again, but it might be better maybe that one of you drives and one of you shoots. That'd be pretty cool. Just makes it more of a difference between the characters, where one of you has to drive the car and one you can shoot. and you have to kind of communicate where things are and when you're turning and stuff like that. It would make the whole thing a lot better. Another thing on the gameplay side of things, actually, speaking of, the merchant in RE4 is a big deal, of course, and you know who he is, you know what he sounds like, you know what he does. In RE5, they scrapped the merchant and just made the shop be like this menu between chapters. Originally there was going to be a merchant in the game, but they scrapped it. It was like a black market dealer guy, and they kind of pulled him out of the game. Definitely bring that back in with an RE5 remake. I think they should make the chapters a lot more seamless. So instead of just going through a loading screen and loading into the next area, you kind of maybe get a cutscene and then it carries on, or you know, it's kind of like the Dead Space remake where they kind of like link together really well. There's no transitions or loading screens and stuff like that. It just kind of flows well. I honestly think that out of all the things they cut from RE5 original, the merchant being one of them, or a merchant at least being one of them, was very weird considering how people loved the RE4 merchant and still do now, even with the remake. So definitely add that back in. Things that should stay, of course, the weapon variation in RE4 versus RE5 is massive. There's a lot more guns in RE5 that you can use. Trading between the two characters is also really good because obviously there's limited inventory space between the two of you, so you can kind of like trade ammo and guns and stuff like that, which is pretty cool. Definitely keep that in as well. RE5 also has a lot of replayability with kind of getting the upgrades for your guns and getting infinite ammo and stuff like that. The same with all RE games, so definitely keep all that stuff in as well. One scene in particular people are going to talk about the remake is the boulder punching scene. I think they've kind of backed themselves into a corner with that one, because it has officially been made canon thanks to Resident Evil Village, because Heisenberg literally calls Chris a boulder punching asshole. So he knows he did it, so he did do it, so they got to keep it in, right? They have to keep it in, so that's probably going to stay. In terms of the two DLCs the game has, that is Lost in Nightmares, which is a prequel DLC where you play as Chris and Jill and you find out what happened in the mansion with Jill. Keep that in as well. Desperate Escape is also a DLC in the game where you play as Jill after she's been saved from Wesker's mind control, and you play as Jill and Josh trying to catch up with Chris and Sheva. Keep that in the game as well. If there's more, that's great. Mercenaries mode in RE5 is huge. It's got a massive cast of characters. It's got Jill, it's got Barry, it's got Rebecca, it's got Chris, Wesker, Excella. Everyone's playable basically in that mode, and it is co-op as well. So definitely keep that in. I think people love the co-op Mercenaries mode. I'm surprised it's not in RE4, but at the same time, it never was in the first place. So maybe RE5 remake will have the co-op Mercenaries mode. But yeah, I think the kind of sum up the whole thing is, you know, in terms of an RE5 remake being successful and, you know, being a faithful adaptation of the game, do what you did in RE4. You know, take out the stuff that is either unnecessary or a thing of the time and change it in a way that makes sense. Keep the game on a base level exactly the same as it was, maybe change the tone. I think RE5 as well as RE4 does get a bit ridiculous over certain sections of the game, so definitely tone that down a little bit. I think they did a really good job with that in RE4 Remake, and also kept some of the more cheesy stuff in the game at times. But yeah, I do kind of see an RE5 Remake being a high possibility. Again, the after credit scene in RE4 just kind of give you that kind of assumption. Again, it could just be kind of it's canon, so RE5 is definitely obviously after RE4, but having that scene in there with like a fully new model Wesker, and you know, seeing some of the locations and characters from RE5 on the screen in front of him, it does kind of make you assume that maybe they are going to do that. And I would really like to see it. I know a lot of people have mixed opinions about RE5 and especially RE6, but for me, like I said, 5 really does sit there as one of my favourite games, so having it be remade is definitely something I wouldn't be complaining about. But that's going to do it. Let me know your thoughts on an RE5 remake down below. Would you want to see one? Would you rather them do something else first? I know a lot of people want to see a Code Veronica remake first. I personally do not. I am thinking about making a video about why I just don't like that game, but maybe I won't do that just yet. Time will tell. I think if a remake does happen for Code Veronica, it would maybe change my opinion of it, but as it stands right now, Code Veronica is not a good game in my opinion. So yeah, I would much rather see a 5 remake, and who knows what else after that. I don't think we'll see it for a while, mind you. I think RE9 will definitely be next, but if there is another remake, I do strongly believe it will be RE5. But yeah, that's going to do it. As always, thank you all for coming by. Maybe leave a like on the video if you did enjoy, and if you are new around here, be sure to subscribe for more Resident Evil content and turn on notifications. I try and post every single day, which is crazy, but yeah, I do try and do that, as well as stream every now and again as well. Thank you all for coming by, and I'll catch you in the next one.